My name is Nathan Eisenberg from Freewheeling. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to modify a normal bike into a balanced bike. This is my daughter Salima. She's going to help me today. Before we take a bike and make it into a balanced bike, Mima, we have to make sure that you fit on the bike. It's a little different than a normal bike because a normal bike you don't want your feet to reach the ground. But with this bike, if you can get both your feet on the ground flat, that means it's going to be good as a balanced bike. When you're riding a normal bike, you want your toes to be up on your tippy toes when you're on your bike. So this one's going to be good to turn into a balanced bike for you, okay? All right, Salima, we're going to use 4 different tools today. Do you see the 4 tools we have? Well, hand me one of the tools. All right, this is a pedal wrench. We're going to use this to remove the pedals on the bicycle. And this is a 12-inch crescent wrench. This adjustable crescent wrench. This will be very helpful to remove the bottom bracket. And the chain tool. This tool is used to adjust and take the chain off and put it back on. And this is a 6-in-1 screwdriver. Oh my gosh, we're stuck. A 6-in-1 screwdriver that will allow me to take off at least the chain guard and maybe some other stuff. So you want to start the process of taking apart the bike, Mima? Right, Salima, the first thing we're going to want to do is if we had training wheels, we'd want to take the training wheels off the bike. But we don't have training wheels on this bike. But to take those training wheels off, I'd use the adjustable wrench just so I could get those back bolts off to remove the training wheels. But with this bike, we don't have the training wheels, so we can start by removing the pedals. Now what do we use to remove the pedals? A screwdriver? A crescent? No, the pedal wrench. We want to use the pedal wrench. So this pedal wrench is actually about 15 millimeters. The thing is, this one's special because it's skinny, and that means it can fit in here. With most kids' bikes, you can use a normal 15 millimeter wrench, but this one is good for big adult bikes too. So now we're going to start by removing the pedals. The first step in turning a regular bike into a balanced bike is removing the training wheels. In this case, this bike doesn't have training wheels, so we don't have to remove them. But if they did, we would use probably the crescent wrench to remove the 2 bolts and remove the training wheels. In this case, since we don't have to, we will start by removing the pedals. The pedals are threaded on so in the same direction on both sides, so that if you were to pedal, the pedals will tighten up and not come off. So to remove a pedal, we need to turn the wrench back towards the back tire. When we do that, that's the opposite direction to pedaling, and that will allow us to take the pedal off. The thinness of this pedal wrench, this 15 millimeter wrench, allows me to easily reach in and get the bolt. Sometimes when you're dealing with more expensive adult bikes, you can't get in with a thicker wrench. But in most cases with kids' bikes, when you're modifying them, you'll easily be able to do that. So now I've removed one, and the threads on this, it threads on clockwise. If you see, I turn it in clockwise direction, it would tighten up, and a counterclockwise, it comes off. But the weird part is, the other pedal is counterclockwise. So if I were to be looking at it from this side, I'd actually have to turn it in the opposite direction. But the easy way to remember is I'm going to turn it towards the back tire. Ooh, stuck. I got it. So now, when I turn it towards the back tire, that allows me to take it off. So remember back, to go back and learn how to ride a bike. Forward, once you know how to ride, you put it back on. Some people, instead of modifying the whole bike, will just remove the pedals, allowing their kid to ride and put the pedals back on when they're ready. In this case, we're going to remove everything, but just removing the pedals, you can use this wrench to remove the pedals and then put them back on. And mostly, the pedals have a L or an R for left or right, so you thread them on the right side, and they'll be right on this surface of the pedal. So now that we've removed the pedals, we now need to take off the chain guard. If we were just stopping here, it's fine, keep the pedals, let the kid ride it and get used to it, and then put the pedals back on when they're ready. But in this case, we need to remove the chain guard. So we use the 6-in-1 screwdriver. This can be Phillips or standard. I'm going to use the flathead that's already on it, the standard. And I'm going to remove the guard. There's one screw here. Throwing all my parts in my barrel to recycle. Try to recycle all the metal. And there's another one up under here. And that one's a little rusted. Makes sense since it's closer to the road and getting splashed water on it more often. This one's a little tough. If you have a screw that isn't turning, you need to apply a lot of pressure to it. That way you don't strip it. So if you don't push hard while you're undoing it, you'll slide and you'll just destroy the metal. And be careful not to stab yourself. It's coming off just slowly. There we go. Now, oh, and there's another one here in front. So it looks like this one's put on with 3 separate screws. Now that I've removed these 3 screws, the fender comes off, or the chain guard. With this chain guard off, we now get access to the chain and to the crank and the bottom bracket. To remove the chain, we need to use the chain tool. It's important when you're using the chain tool that we use this tool to push the pins out. We don't want to push the pins all the way through, just in case we want to reuse the chain or give it to someone else. If you're just going to throw the chain out, or actually I prefer recycle the chain, then you don't have to worry about this. You can just push the pin all the way through. But if not, you don't want the pin to go all the way through. With this chain guard, I'm able to put my finger against the other side, and when I start feeling it pressing against my finger, I know to stop. So now that I've removed, oh, perfect. And if you look right here, let me back this off a little bit more. I didn't push the pin all the way through. It's only through one side. That means I can reuse the chain, which is good. All right, remove the chain. There we go. I'm going to recycle that. And now, this is different than most bikes. This one seems to have this chain guard. The chain guard is somehow attached here. I might have to remove that too. We'll see. Okay, now I need to spin the bike around so we can get access to the other side, allowing you to see the bottom bracket and how I remove it. On the opposite side to where we were working, there is the nuts that hold the bottom bracket on. This is the crank arm, and this is the bottom bracket. On kids' bikes, the crank arm and the bottom bracket are connected. You can't just take the crank arms off like on adult bikes. So we're going to use the 12-inch adjustable crescent wrench to remove the nut holding the bottom bracket together. Now, you see how I turn this? I turn it clockwise. So this comes off clockwise, which means the next part will also come off clockwise. Get it all the way down the crank arm. All right, now that gives us access to a washer that we can just pull out of the way. I like using the screwdriver to move the washer. It gives me easy access. There we go. And underneath, we have another piece that holds the bearings in. Now, there's 2 slots, one here and one here. I think there's a tool that you can buy to remove this part, but I find that every time I can just do it with the screwdriver. So I take the flat part of the screwdriver, put it there, and in this case, I'm just going to spin, maybe not. Remember, we're turning it clockwise. You see I'm wearing gloves here because it gets really greasy, and if you don't wear gloves, then you got a lot of cleaning to do afterwards. So I like to use gloves, allowing me to save some cleanup time. Just throw the gloves out. All right. Almost off. Now, what I've discovered is that once you want to pull out this crank arm, if you don't get the bearings out first, it's really hard to get the crank arm out. So now that I've removed the bearings, there's more space. So these are bearings. Sometimes bearings are free floating, but in more modern bikes, they have them in a ring like this, and each bearing is contained in there. So now I carefully remove the crank arm. You see there's some bearings on the other side too, and they're pushed up against the body of the bike. This is where the bearings slide. Now that I've removed that, you can see there's a lot of grease in here. I'm hoping this comes off. Okay, this is going to take some work. I'm going to have to just break this piece off because it's in the way and it's preventing me from having a safe bike. I don't want these pieces sticking out and hurting a child, so I'm going to have to remove those. But in most bikes, you don't have that problem. Now I like to have some wipes or some rags or something to clean out, because if you look, this is all full of old grease, and the last thing we want our kids to do is get in there and get grease all over their clothes and all over the place. So you can wipe the whole bike down, because there's a lot of dirt on used bikes before you give it to your kid. But you see now it's getting clean. Go on the other side, do the same thing. And this is actually going to take more work than almost every bike I've ever dealt with, because I need to remove this piece. And I'll have to do that later, because today I don't have a hammer with me or the proper tools. But if you want to look at the bike before you use it and make sure that it doesn't have this irregular piece here, it's probably a good idea. And if not, you'll have to figure that one out on your own, because I don't have that on this video. Okay, so now I can clean the whole bike up, and you have a balance bike ready for a kid to ride. You lower the seat to the level so the kid can have both their feet flat on the ground. Let them coast around. This one doesn't have brakes. It works okay for balance bikes not to have brakes, but it's always preferable so they can learn how to use the brakes and be more ready to ride. All right, that's how it works. Thank you. Now you have your balance bike.